prosecutor, and he said, listen here, he said, the custodial grandparents who had temporary custody before were not even contacted. And mine is staying with an ex-girlfriend. And this needs to be corrected. Home services will cooperate.
Okay, we're live.
So,
I think he's turning around the table.
is the camera on or do I have to turn it on? It's not-
Yeah, go ahead and turn it on. Okay, we're gonna get going here because we are live, okay? And this is my third fourth and final session. And tomorrow, that'll leave Andy and I free to help out with John's talks and Susan's, which will make up most of the day. Is that going right there?
It's blinking?
Yep,
Yes.
it's blinking.
Okay, we're blinking, so we're ready to go. And so, what am I going to do on this last session? I hope that the other sessions were helpful in regard to giving a history of where the church has actually stood on Spirit baptism, the baptism of the Holy Spirit, and sanctification, okay? And the church position from the beginning that sanctification is the justification process or the salvation process, okay? So where does that leave us today? As established in the prior sessions, it's obvious that present-day Christians could have no clue how to live biblically because the church hijacked Christianity in the 4th century and eliminated sanctification altogether. All right. But I do think, if nothing else, due to the law written on the heart of every person created by God, as discussed in a prior session, that we know some basics that we can build on. Okay. Good old-fashioned common sense from God because we're created in His image. You know, stuff about how the world works and doesn't work is helpful, all right? And I'm going to start with some real basics here because, look, those of us who have come to believe in justification by new birth as opposed to justification by faith, sanctification is really a wide open frontier, okay? We need to go about a collective effort to learn about sanctification and Christian living. For one thing, as Susan will be talking about a little bit tomorrow, we need a whole new Christian music movement that is music about in-depth sanctification. Again, true sanctification and wisdom about how to live it and how to build the various and sundry things like virtue and love and all the things, 8 things, that, or is it 11, that Peter mentions in 2 Peter chapter 1, I believe, verses 5 through 11, I know that. I believe he said, add to your faith. Okay, so your faith is the foundation that we add these things on. So what I want to talk about tonight in my final session is some raw basics. Some really basic stuff. All right? And you remember what our philosophy, one of our philosophies of learning is that you take what the knowledge, building knowledge, is like building a puzzle, and don't be the least bit discouraged that you don't understand a lot of stuff that's in the Bible. Because what you do, you keep reading and you take what you do know objectively, that there's no doubt about that. And like building a puzzle, you set that aside. Okay? And what you'll do is you learn more and more, you'll build on those fundamentals. So it's like, doing the corners of and the edges of the puzzle first, right? And then that's going to reveal how the inner pieces and the rest of the smaller pieces fit in. Kind of the same thing. So, what I want to talk about is under law thinking. All right? And I've promised myself 100 times that I was going to carry a journal around with me and make a list of under law thinking. All right? Under law thinking is the waters we swim in. Okay? The we is the unregenerate, the religious, and the truly saved. It is a state of being that cannot be overcome except for the new birth. However, even those who now understand justification by new birth will have a long and hard journey climbing out of those waters and learning how to breathe on dry land. Okay? Simply stated, under law thinking seeks happiness, and this is real simplistic, probably very controversial, what I'm about to say tonight, very much food for thought. Okay? Simply stated, under law thinking seeks happiness through not breaking rules and laws, and depends on others not to break rules and laws, rather than to make the focus on accomplishing love as a way to displace hate. The focus is the negative focus on not hating and not defining the not doing of something as an accomplishment. Okay? Hence, the recipe for becoming a good person is to stop doing things that break some rule or standard. Accomplishment is defined as something you don't do. Right? Okay? You don't break the law. All right? This is why people rarely remember what you do right. The focus is what you didn't do. That is, you didn't succeed in not breaking a law. Relationally, if you love someone, it means you don't break their laws. If you love me, keep my commandments now refers to everyone in your life, especially your spouse. Most, if not all, marriage counseling is based on the successful law keeping based on each spouse's jurisprudence. This is why marriage counseling is almost always an abject failure. The book of James states that people quarrel because of the desires that war within them. What are those desires? The desire that others obey your laws. Furthermore, this under law thinking is in league with sin's use of the law to control others through condemnation. This reality is seen clearly in nursing facilities among the aides. The aides presently residing at any given facility want the halls to run according to the way they roll. Trust me, when a new aide comes in, they can't do anything right no matter how good they are. Why? The ruling aides want to control the new aides through condemnation and bring them into subjection in regard to how they run the halls. Okay? At home, the punishment for a husband breaking the wife's laws is nagging, right? This under law thinking also includes the death penalty in many cases, i.e. the silent treatment. You don't exist. I cut you out of my life. Hark! Is there someone in the room talking? It couldn't be. I cut that person out of my life. They no longer exist. Okay? That's why I don't hear you talking right now. You're dead, remember? Okay? I used to be a pastor and I used to counsel. I don't know how many times I heard a wife look over at me with the husband sitting right there and saying, he's dead to me. Okay? Well, how's that? He broke her law, and whatever series of law or law he broke falls under the jurisdiction of capital punishment, according to her laws. And so he's dead. He no longer exists. Except for the alimony payments that are soon coming. Okay? Of course, husbands also have their own punishments for breaking their personal laws. Drinking, the condoning of adultery, and various and other sentencings at their own private court hearings. Moreover, in all cases, thanks to church, when the inevitable battles take place when everyone's laws have been broken, the long drawn-out drama of reconciliation must take place. Okay? Yes, indeed. Instead of moving on with a focus on love, okay, and the criminal offense must be revisited in some reconciliation ritual, adding to the condemnation and thereby empowering the sin further. Okay? I can't remember how many times I counseled couples as a pastor, and it's, hark, he repents and he repents and he repents, and he says he's going to stop doing it, but he'll never change. Okay, which of course strips hope, completely out of the situation. Well, why is that? Every time the guy breaks one of her laws, there's this big coming to Jesus meeting where the whole condemnation and the slashing of wrists on the altar, all it really does is just inflames condemnation and is throwing fire and really empowering the sin. Okay? What does the Bible say to do? Put off, put on. Think about this in your reading of Scripture. Okay? Scripture emphasizes very little in regard to repentance of the believer. Okay? Instead of all of this lifestyle of repentance and continually going back to the cross and owning your own sin and all this other stuff, for Christians in the Bible, there's very little of that. Okay? You could cite Matthew 18 maybe as a situation where it's necessary to go to a brother, okay, with a witness if he won't hear you. So on and so forth. But repentance in the Bible is primarily spoken of is that one-time turning away from the former life to the new life. Okay? This big, huge counseling construct concerning a lifestyle of repentance is really nowhere to be found in the New Testament. And in my book, if you believe what Romans 6, 7, and 8 states, okay, it really just empowers sin, is what it does, okay? Well, certainly not. Every time said law has been broken and the sin has been committed, a remembrance must take place to deepen the condemnation which empowers the same sin, which is the point I just made. When you have a pet peeve law that your spouse continually violates, cancel the law and give the spouse permission to do it with a vengeance and watch the offense go away. Okay? I think that's true. Okay?
You say that again, please?
Huh?
Can you repeat that?
When you have a pet peeve or law, and what I'm saying here is let's look at the world of law. Let's look at the reality of law. Okay? We have civil law, criminal law. We have rules at work, policies we call them. We have rules at school, school policies. What else do we have? I love that old 60s song, sign, sign everywhere, a sign, breaking up my memory, killing my mind, or something like this, don't do that, can't you read the sign? I love that song, okay? But then, what we gotta be careful of is that we have our own laws, okay? And when somebody annoys us, are they really doing anything immoral, or are they just really breaking one of our own personal laws? Okay? Really, okay, let me give you an example of some under law thinking. And I've had to deal with this myself. You know, if you really respected me, you'd stop doing that. I mean, we just threw the microwave away, but some 2 or 3 years ago, I put a sign on the microwave, okay? I put a sign on the microwave because one of my pet peeves is that when people don't cover food when they put it in the microwave, okay? And, you know, I just don't like to use a microwave when it's got spaghetti or whatever else splattered all over the inside, right? So, I put a sign on the microwave, please cover all food when you put it in there, okay? If you don't do this, it speaks to your character. That's the sign, right? Remember that sign? It was still on the white microwave when we threw it away last week. And when I was thinking about what I was going to speak on the conference and so on and so forth, I saw that sign down there. And I'm like, you know, I have changed. The fact of the matter is, when you live with a bunch of family in the house, you live with some people in the house who are not going to cover the plate, and they never will, and they're not ever going to cover the plate, okay? So get over it, okay? They're just not going to stop doing it, okay?
Can I interject?
Yeah.
Okay. So, this is a big thing with when you have among siblings. This is a big thing among siblings.
Right.
And this is something, and Hannah can attest to this. This is something that Samantha and I battle with constantly.
Mm-hmm.
You know, he's annoying me.
Right.
He won't stop. She's doing this. She won't stop. Dad, Mom, make her stop.
Right.
You know, make him stop. You know, he's putting mustard on his food. That's gross. You know, it's just things like that. You know.
It's a violation of your law. That grosses me out.
You know, so, and then a little bit of self-deprecation here too, is I can, you know, my own personal thing is Samantha hates it when I fold laundry.
Okay.
Because there's absolutely no rhyme or reason to how I sort it after it's folded.
Right.
You know, because I frankly don't know what our kids wear. I don't really pay attention to what our kids wear. And when I'm folding laundry, I really don't know whose clothes belong to who.
Mm-hmm.
You know, and so I'm just like, I fold it and I put it here and there. You know, maybe shirts will all get together in the same pile, you know.
Right.
But I'm just like, okay, there's a space on the bed here, so I'm just going to put it there.
Right.
And it frustrates her to no end. And she's just like, why, your piles make no sense. And I'm like, why don't you just be thankful that I'm folding the laundry?
So, yeah, and you know, the thing of it is that Peter says, and I may repeat this, but I want to make sure I get it in. Listen to what Peter says, and of course I'm heavily paraphrasing. He says, love each other deeply from the heart, okay? And be patient with each other. So he coincides being patient with loving each other deeply, because patience covers a multitude of sins, okay? Another thing that I want to be able to stick in as far as when people break our personal laws, i.e. pet peeves, or whatever, okay? Another thing is that what I'm going to speak to in a little bit in our sanctification is under law thinking prevents us from assessing people truthfully. Okay? And I'm going to talk about one of the pillars of sanctification in Christian living being building your own life. Okay? And the other people who live with you and associate you accurately assessing that building process and looking at you truthfully. Under law thinking, and now we're getting into Philippians 2:9, 2, 7, 8, and 9. Philippians, whatever is beautiful, whatever is wonderful, blah, blah, blah. Dwell, the Greek word is dwell on these things. Okay? Basically, when you learn to do that, okay, not, sugarcoating what the person really is, but here's the fact of the matter. If you assess most people truthfully, there's so much good in their life that you look at something they do that annoys you and you say, oh well, what's good about that person dwarfs and minimizes their faults, for lack of a better term. Okay? And that's true with most people. But in church, I can give you examples of under law thinking where that, for instance, when I was an elder at Clear Creek Chapel, okay, and there was a huge, the church was on the verge of being split right down the middle, and our budget was so tight we couldn't afford to split. It would have destroyed the church, and everything was very negative. I was the Awana commander, okay, and so I'm not going to go into all the details, but this was a massively huge Awana program, like over 100 kids, okay? And the end of year ceremony ended up being totally cool. I kind of rolled the dice and did something different, but it really turned out awesome. And so many parents and so many leaders in the church came to me afterwards and said, thank you. This church so needed that, okay? And everybody just was like, man, right now this church so needed this, okay? This positive things. Well, guess what? We forgot to give an award to one of the children. Somehow she got off the list, okay? We handed out like 50 rewards that night, okay? We forgot somebody, okay? Oh man, I mean, I even had a parent tell me that whole ceremony ended up being pointless because of the one sin. Okay? What is that? That is so classic of under-law thinking. But it not only takes place in the church, out in the world they think like that. You go to any job, okay, and the under-law thinking is rampant, and the use of condemnation to control others is rampant, okay? So one of the keys is, in case I'm not going to get this in later, is, again, I think a major sanctification and Christian living principle is this: assess people truthfully, and in most cases, whether they are lost or saved, their positives dwarf their faults. Okay, now with everybody, that's not true. Okay, and what I'm going to talk about the people in which that's not true, they haven't been brought up to be life builders. And I'm going to get to that. Okay? You consider the dynamics of all of this, and it is no wonder that reality is divisions upon division and divisions within divisions. Love seeks to unify, love seeks oneness. Nothing throws gasoline on the fire of hate like the church's promotion of a lifestyle of repentance. This is a focus on sin for purposes of elevating the act of Christ to end sin. This is an unmitigated metaphysical disaster. According to church orthodoxy, the propensity of man is to think of, now listen to this. According to church orthodoxy, the propensity of mankind is to think of himself more highly than he ought, and this must be resisted by, quote, owning your own sin, etc. Nothing is further from the truth. People, yes. Do you know, though, why people have a tendency to try to hide their sin, make excuses, so on and so forth? Do you know why? They're sick of being condemned. Enough of the condemnation already. I'm not going to own up to one more sin. Okay? The reality of the matter is that most people lack confidence, okay? Most people are full of fear, okay? And most people think ill of themselves, okay? That's the reality, because that is what the world is constantly foisting on them, okay? Listen, you can't accomplish anything if you don't have self-confidence, all right? And I saw this video, or this meme, from Snoop Dogg, who I am not a fan of, okay? But he accepted this award. And he got up and he said, hi, thank you for this award. I just want to thank me for this award. I want to thank me for the hard work that I put into earning this award. And he goes on, and I'm like, you know what, that's absurd, but there's a lot of truth to that, okay? There's a lot of truth to that, okay? Self-esteem is earned, okay? Man's propensity is to condemn self and others. Suicide, in most cases, is the ultimate self-condemnation. So why do people commit suicide? They've condemned themselves. Why did Judas commit suicide? Read it for yourself. It was self-condemnation. Okay? People constantly struggle to raise their own self-esteem by condemning others and watch the news to compare themselves with the dregs of society, which makes them look better to themselves. With most people, it's a constant battle to raise up their self-esteem while the world's trying to build it down. Because people with no confidence and no self-esteem and no knowledge are easy to control. And the world is all about control. Okay? So I'm not saying that you have high thoughts of yourself for the sake of having high self-esteem, it must be a truthful assessment. The Apostle Paul said to not think higher of yourself than you ought. We're looking for a truthful assessment here, okay? And in most cases, there's very little of real and true constructive criticism in the world. Most criticism that you hear about yourself from others is designed to control you in some way, and that's just a fact, okay? So be careful when somebody comes to you wanting to give you some constructive criticism. All right, I doubt it. I'm going to hear you out, but you be wanting to control me. That's what this is all about, okay? And in their endeavor to control others, they will condemn them with what they are guilty of because it is readily available in their own sin catalog. If somebody falsely accuses you of something, more than likely they got the idea from what they do in their own life. Okay? And that's why as a nurse aide, out of all the years I've been a nurse aide, I have maybe gone to the DON and reported another aide for something once, okay? And the reason for that is because a lot of DONs know when aides come to them supposedly ratting out another aide, DONs for the most part know that the aide is guilty of what they're accusing others of doing, and it'll actually just put the spotlight on you, okay? So what's the biblical way? Individually, we accomplish and evaluate ourselves according to a truthful assessment. High self-esteem is earned. But remember, the world at large is out to keep your self-esteem low. Remember, sin seeks to control others through condemnation. Relationally, in regard to other people, we focus on what they bring to the table. A truthful evaluation of a person, hopefully, devalues their faults, you see. That is, faults that are legitimate faults that break legitimate laws, or laws that are self-evident to humanity. Your personal preferences are not legitimate laws. As Peter stated, patience is an act of love that covers a multitude of sins. And according to Paul, patience is empowered by focusing on what the person brings to the table, not their faults, and especially faults judged by fruits, by bogus laws. Listen to this. We know a few things. We know a few things here. Patience is empowered. Patience towards others is empowered by truthfully evaluating what that person brings to the table, to themselves and to others and you. Okay? That's what empowers patience. This is a good sanctification principle. Associate and fellowship with people endeavoring to build a self-esteem based on truth. Okay? Fellowship with those who seek to accomplish things. Associate with builders. Okay? With build. Okay? And I have here a subheading, the problem with life. Okay? Growing up, nothing intrigued me more than World War II movies. Okay? Here, these people were in the middle of fighting for the very survival of humanity, and in the process, were swinging to the music of big bands, romancing, and dressing up in style, seemingly oblivious that the world was on the precipice of doom, and it was. Okay? But those World War II movies reflect reality. Life is a war. A war for your freedom and happiness is ongoing on the outside, and a war is going on inside mentally and physiologically. War defines the present reality. Sanctification is war. Life is war. In regard to some of us, our lives are good and we are thankful. But that will not last if we aren't on a war footing. something is always out to destroy us on many different fronts. If you consider the least common denominator, it is death in life. Even if your life is presently good, this does not mean that death has declared a ceasefire. This reality transcends all life, from private personal thoughts to statecraft on a worldwide level and everything in between. Okay? When we raise kids and bring them into the world, there's some things that we need to teach our children, as I promised that, I would cover some of these things under the subject of sanctification, but our children need to learn fundamentally that the world is out to steal their freedom, that even though God created them in their image to be free, okay, the world is out to steal their freedom.
Did you get it?
And life, yep, sure did. And life is war, okay? And so how do we raise our kids up to be happy in view of that? Well, we're going to talk about that. So anyway, these thoughts occurred to me while studying physiology for school, and again, I'm stealing from an article here. Think about this. Good health requires the body to have a good internal balance. This is called homeostasis. But often unknown to us, this homeostasis boils down to one thing and one thing only. The war within that is constantly raging is being won by the good guys. And the good guys are not very virtuous looking. They are merciless creatures who take no prisoners. Homeostasis is the work of the central nervous system and the endocrine system working together. One is electricity and the other is chemicals. The liaison between the two is the hypothalamus, but this article is about the immune system that is part of the endocrine system army. Let me introduce the subjects that are involved in this vicious war. Specific immunity is the body's reaction to certain threat or known threats. Non-specific immunity is the body's reaction to anything it does not recognize as a normal body substance. Okay, in other words, shoot first and ask questions later. Antibodies are normal body substances that recognize abnormal or unwanted substances. They attack and destroy such substances, which you can call search and destroy. Antigens are abnormal or unwanted substances. An antigen causes the body to produce antibodies. The antibodies attack and destroy the antigens. Phagocytes are white blood cells that digest and destroy microorganisms and other unwanted substances. In other words, they eat the enemy. It is unclear as to whether or not they are nourished by eating these organisms, but nevertheless. Lymphocytes are white blood cells. Lymphocytes are white blood cells that produce antibodies. Lymphocyte production increases as the body responds to an infection. B lymphocytes cause the production of antibodies that circulate in the plasma. The antibodies react to specific antigens. T lymphocytes, T cells, destroy invading cells known as killer T cells. They produce poisons near the invading cells. So this is chemical warfare. They also call on other cells to then do mopping up operations via cannibalism. Okay? Every day that we feel great, listen, every day that we feel great, it is due to the good guys winning the violent war within that involves innumerable troops. The death toll is one person. And the death toll is in one person, and in one day far surpasses the casualties of all wars together in human history. When discussing cells, we're not talking about small numbers. A single person has about 100 trillion cells and about 10 times more of microorganisms. However, though this war is automatically fought by intelligent cells apart from our knowledge altogether, we can aid the internal army by making good choices. These choices that properly equip our army involves the following: knowing what brings life and death, and knowing that the rules cannot be changed. These choices range from what we eat and drink to what we think, which leads to what we believe. For example, if we believe the wrong things, especially things that cause fear, the central nervous system starts partaking in all kinds of fool's errands and wasting other resources, right? Okay? If we believe wrong things about reality, it causes fear, and our central nervous system reacts to that. And like I've stated here, the body is going on fool's errands. Okay?
You talk about stress.
Right. Our central nervous system is reacting to things based on what we're telling the system, but it's not true. Okay? Stubborn people don't know who or what their friends and enemies are. They are unwise in regard to what brings life and death. And they don't understand how the world works. Okay? They think they can change the rules. Where we would begin to cite examples from the big picture of statecraft politics to the homeless drug addict. Much could be discussed here, but the Bible states that internal misguided desires compel people to choose death instead of life, while thinking they can change the rules of how the world works. Or sadly, the misguided desire has gained so much power in their lives that they are willing to choose death to have said desire for one more moment. That's a bad idea. And I might add that the whole church's system of a singular perspective on law so unnecessarily empowers sin in the lives of true believers. Okay? And for the rest of us, we fall into the ignorant idea that happiness means that death is agreed to a ceasefire. Death is never in a ceasefire mode. So why this life? Because Christ came to put an end to this war we call life. All life is a war, inside and out. Okay? And we are his compatriots in that endeavor. Christ has also come to make all of the division one. So he's come to end all of this division. He's come to end all of the sin. He's come to end all of the death and to make everything one. Who we are and how we live points to the day when our brother and king will bring war to an end. Future hope is why we can be happy in the midst of this war. Whether having a successful marriage or raising children successfully, it would seem to help to know why we do such things. The marriage question brings on an easier answer than the children question. We get married for companionship and standing together and doing life. But tradition aside, few people really know why they have children. Ask people, why they have children. They don't know. Okay, because it's the Geico commercial. It's what you do, right? I love that commercial where the mother is calling the son at an inopportune time, and he's some secret agent that's fighting these guys. Remember on a rooftop, that commercial? Mothers call you at an inopportune time. It's what they do, right? And when they do know, the reasoning is disastrous. For example, if you are having children to, quote, complete your marriage is already doomed. Okay? And I even knew that years ago. As a pastor, I would counsel a couple premarital counseling, and they would state that they couldn't wait to have kids because kids will complete our marriage. And even back then I knew you guys are done. Okay? You're done. You're well done on both sides. It's time to come off the grill. You're doomed. All right? the little completers eventually grow up and move out and will probably only call when they need something. So when the little completers are gone, then what completed your marriage is gone. Now what do you got? Okay? It's pretty simple math, actually. We have children to build families which are critical to doing life. Families are people within a group that work together to maneuver through life. That's what families are for. They do life and take on life and maneuver through life together. Okay? People within a family contribute to that cause and also contribute in some way to humanity overall. The focus of raising a child is to prepare them to be all they can be, to prepare them to be the best them. That's what child rearing is all about, to raise your children to be the best them, to be builders, to be producers. Why? Because that's what we're created to do. Okay? Look, another thing, a few things I knew as a pastor, I saw it all over and over and over again. Almost everybody I counseled that was in the dark grips of mental illness had a lifestyle of laziness. They're lazy. Okay? Every time. All right? I could think of 2 or 3 guys right off my head where the parents came and talked to me, and it's like, growing up, he's the one kid in the family that was just stinking lazy. Okay? It always leads to mental illness. Okay? And the Bible teaches this too. Why? Because we're created in the image of God, and what does God do? He creates, He builds. Christ said to the Father, He's always what? Working. Okay? That's what we're made to do. And if you raise your children to be builders and to be all they can be and to be producers and hang out with other kids that are producers, they're going to grow up mentally healthy. Okay? They must be taught what the purpose of life is and what will give them well-being. You know, what leads to well-being is taking satisfaction in what they accomplish and showing them the joy of that. Okay? We can discuss some very basic things here. First, they must be taught that they were created to be free and the world is out to steal their freedom. Every child should be raised to know that. Okay? Secondly, you know, that if all of our children were raised to know that the world is out to steal their freedom, there wouldn't be a Democrat Party. It couldn't exist. Okay? The fact that there's a Democrat Party tells us that many children aren't raised to know that the world is out to steal their freedom and their liberty. Secondly, they must be taught that they were created to produce, and personal well-being is found in personal accomplishment. God has created many things in the world to enjoy, but the core fundamental is personal accomplishment. That is the tree, everything else is the branches. Listen, please don't have children and raise them to think other people's thoughts. And don't trust others to raise them. Okay? Know this, the state has a vested interest in keeping your child thoughtless and dumb because people without knowledge are easy to control. That's the bottom line. Knowledge is power. A cursory observation of public schools reveal their agenda to keep your child dumb. Okay? In regard to my and Susan's situation with our grandson, you may notice my aggressiveness in trying to get project wrapped up. Why? Because if he ends up staying with us long term, his education is going to have to be supplemented if he grows up to be anything at all. And what children need to understand, and as Christians, look, whether you like it or not, our children are a reflection on what we bring to the table. period. Okay? Look, what I'm trying to drill into his head is that what he is learning in elementary school right now is going to determine what he's able to do in the future. Okay? Without knowledge, you're in bondage. Period. Okay? And beware of low expectations for your children. I know that pressuring your children to excel gets a bad rap, but I would rethink that if I were you. And another thing, and I'm not going to get on that, I'm going to kind of skip over that, okay, as I'm getting close to my close here, okay, I forgot to load up the video that I wanted to play on YouTube of this 7-year-old playing a cover for Sultans of Swing, okay, or some song like that. And this is this 7-year-old who was amazing, okay. Now, and playing the drums and just having a good time, but the one thing that you saw in him playing these drums and having a good time is that his confidence, his self-confidence, okay? Now, look, it's no mistake that the founding fathers of Americanism were incredible. I forget which guy it was who was an ambassador to Russia when he was 11 years old. Who? It was either Jefferson or Madison. I thought it was Jefferson. Okay? But what these guys accomplished, even as young children, was absolutely amazing. And when they started getting into the American Revolution and the Declaration around that time, this, that, and the other, they were like writing crazy amounts of books, crazy amount of dictionaries. Why? Their focus was knowledge, 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 knowledge. Because they knew knowledge was freedom. Okay? So what they were doing was the antithesis of what the world had been all the way up to them, in that you keep the producers ignorant, okay, and all of the caste system that comes along with that. Good practical living and common sense is next to godliness. So instead of what the church does and religion does, is to try the best they can to make a wider and wider gulf, okay, between the spiritual and reality. Really, good practical living, good common sense is next to godliness. You want to bring the material and the spiritual actually as close together as you can get it. Okay? The New Testament speaks to the fact that even in the New Testament, that in our day, everything that God was created, was good. Now look, in the book of Genesis, when it starts out, God created this, that, and the other, and he saw that it was good. He saw that it was good. It was very good. And you're reading through this and you're saying, what the heck? Why is God stating the obvious here? Yeah, God, you created it and it's good, you think? That's what I would have guessed, right? But God says it over and over and over again. Why? Because God knew what was coming, didn't he? Okay? And we should get that. The material world is good. Okay? Everything that God creates and the way he creates it is good. Okay? And everything that you see going on in our society today is a pushback against that fact and a pushback against God and enmity against God.
I want to make a clarification while you're on that point.
Mhm.
Because the word good can have two meanings to it. Good can refer to its quality,
Mhm.
but good can also be an ethical statement. A statement regarding
Mhm.
its value, its ethical value, an ethical statement. When God said something was good, he was referring to its quality,
Mhm.
which is a metaphysical statement, not an
Mhm.
ethical statement.
Mhm.
The collectivist mindset, or of which Platonism is,
Mhm.
said just the opposite.
Right.
It was not good. It wasn't necessarily evil, okay?
It's less than.
But it was less than perfect. It was
Mhm.
fundamentally flawed. So it's a statement regarding something's quality.
Right.
Okay, and that's the distinction. And this is the argument that I get into with Christians on Facebook or whatever. And I even make this statement in on our 3 questions web
Right.
page, that goodness is not a moral statement; it's a quality statement. Okay. They say, well, how can you say man is good? Because they're all Bible says there is none righteous, and what they're doing is they're equating goodness with righteousness, and it's not
Mhm.
the same thing.
Right.
When it's God made it good, meaning it's going to do what I made it to do,
Right.
which is a metaphysical reality, which is a statement regarding its quality.
But before you even get out of Genesis, the serpent's calling it the knowledge of good and evil. So evil comes into play there, okay? Or at least the tagging of it being evil, okay? But yeah, I see your point. So another thing that I want to talk about sanctification, and I want to tread lightly on it before I conclude with the subject of purpose, having purpose in our lives, okay, is that, we can't get around the fact that the scriptures does promise, okay, reward for living godly and living a good common sense in this life, okay? Peter said, "For whosoever would love life and see good days must keep their tongue from evil and their lips from deceitful speech," which Peter takes that passage out of Psalms. So what I kind of picked up too is, for whoever would love life. Can anybody here tell me what the antithesis of loving life is? Okay? Depression, right? Okay? So living a good, common sense life, godly life, let me say wise life, okay? Whether it's common and what's evident to man, or more specific sanctification knowledge that comes out of the Bible, that's what people would need to do if they would love life and, quote, see good days, okay? Children are promised a blessed life if they get along with their parents, okay? Ephesians 5, something along those lines. The first commandment that has a promise, Paul says. And I stopped short of promise, a promise saying, that it's a promise from God that no challenges or ill will come into your life. But I want to cite another encouraging principle that I've seen in my own life and many times in the lives of others. It would seem that what happens in the garden, where God creates Adam and Eve as mere creatures, okay, and then they're deceived by the serpent, and how does God respond to that? He makes a way to make man his very family. his very literal offspring. And I think this is indicative of God's MO. Whatever evil tries to do, God will take that evil and make something that you had better. Okay? And I've seen this over and over and over again in my life, and it seems that Romans 8 speaks to that. You know, God turns things into good for those who love him. Okay? So I just want to cite those few things there. And I want to close with speaking to purpose. And I want to use the elderly as an example of purpose. Okay? People are created to have purpose and to accomplish things. That doesn't end till the day we die. I really don't think that it does. Okay? As a nurse aide, I can't tell you how many times I've seen it, the difference between the elderly that remain productive as much as they can and those who are coasting in neutral. Okay? Add to that family involvement. My attitudes towards the elderly, especially in a facility, is something is better than nothing. I really don't enjoy taking care of catatonic residents. I see those who partake in meanness as a cut above because at least they are doing something. I also struggle with seeing residents who try to do too much as a problem. Okay, yes, they may fall and injure themselves, but nothing really does more damage overall than inactivity. The body is made to move, the body is made to work, okay? And when the body gets in neutral, listen, when I go to school, my body goes to heck in a handbasket. I start putting on the pounds, you know, quirky stuff starts going on, okay? So I want to introduce you to Anne, not her real name, of course, nor will I name the facility. She came to my hall in a state of severe depression. Anne was in her 90s, perhaps she still is, as I have not worked in that facility for a long time. She would not get out of bed or eat or talk. Anne was taken from her homestead and put in a facility after she took a bad fall. And she was not a happy camper, okay? Anne was put under hospice care, and the family pretty much expected her to die in the near future as she was not eating, wouldn't get out of bed, slept endless hours. The aides did everything they could to get whatever nourishment in her they could. And usually in that situation, what we'll do is we'll just take a cup of pudding or Jell-O, and it'll be beside the bed with a spoon in it. And whatever aid goes in there or whatever shift, they'll try to get a spoonful down her. Okay? And so they did that. Okay? Then, with much coaxing, a particular nurse got her into a recliner wheelchair. Every day, they parked her at the nurse station. This interaction resulted in the nurse's station on that particular hall was very busy. So for the first couple weeks, she just sat there with her covers over her head, didn't talk, wouldn't eat, okay? And then you've got all of this activity, all of the nurses that came would talk to her even though she wouldn't talk to them. This interaction resulted in Anne coming back alive. I saw her slowly but surely come back alive. Okay? Every day, for as long as I worked there, Anne was there at that nurse station being Anne. Okay? Every day, for as long as I worked there, Anne was at that nursing station being Anne. What we learned about her follows. She lived an extraordinary life. She was also, once she started coming out of her shell and coming alive slowly but surely, she was also far beyond what you would refer to as a colorful personality. Go ahead and hand me that, please. Okay.
It's Samantha.
Just hang it up, please. Yeah. Okay.
Hey, we can't talk right now, okay?
Indeed, she became a legend within the healthcare network, and certainly the life of Hall 300. The person that she was came out, and man, was she something else. Anne found her new purpose and a new happiness. One day, she was visited by family, and what you got to understand is the purpose that Anne, the socialization started bringing her out of what she was. First one word, a few words, and then her personality started coming out, and people were like, whoa. And like I said, this is beyond, way beyond what you would call a colorful personality, okay? But especially in the kind of facilities that I am, nurses and aides can get burned out, okay? They can get burned out. Not on that hall, okay? There was no burnout issues on that hall, okay? The nurses couldn't wait to get to work and find her sitting there at the nurses' station keeping everybody company, okay? One day she was visited by family members who came to the facility to inquire as to why she was still alive, okay? So they call the facilities and they're like, she's still alive? What's going on? So they came up to visit. When they saw her in her wheelchair at the nurse station telling jokes to the staff, who were buckled over with laughter, the looks on their faces were absolutely priceless. Okay, they looked like they had seen somebody who had resurrected from the dead. They couldn't believe it. And actually, in a way, they did. Another thing that was priceless was the look on the visiting physicians' faces when they found out she was still under hospice care. They would first go to her room and not find her there, resulting in the assumption that she had already passed. Okay, so then they would go to the nurses' station and they would say, oh, well, we went to this Ann such and such's room. I assume she's already passed. And the nurses would say, no, that's her right there. And the physician would be like, you're kidding me, right? So the big joke on the hall was that this Anne was still in hospice care. When you watched her and how she acted and what she did, and the aides couldn't help to tell the newer aides or other aides that didn't know her that well, and, oh yeah, by the way, she's under hospice care, okay? It was a big joke, all right? Look, Maslow's hierarchy of needs has a lot of validity, okay? Purpose. We got to continue to be builders to the end, because when we're builders, we have purpose. And, I'll tell you another funny thing about Anne, to give you a little enlightenment on her personality. I don't wear jewelry in what I do, because really you can't. Germs and whatnot, bacteria can get trapped underneath the ring. You can cut somebody with the ring. You're tugging and pulling in people. Well, with her on my hall, I had to start wearing my wedding ring, okay? So I wear my wedding ring to work, and, I was talking to her in the hallway, and she goes, what? What's that? You're married? And I go, well, yeah, Ann, I'm married. And she goes, happily? Okay. Yeah, Ann, happily. And she goes, oh, shoot. Okay. She goes, well, I reckon we can still be friends. Oh, yes, Ann, we can still be friends. But that was Ann, okay? We are made to build things, we are made to create things, we are made to contribute to the lives of others, we are made to be free, and we are made to be happy, okay? Look, being happy is a command, okay? Being happy is a command. If you're not happy, it's time to check under the hood, okay? This is what it means to be created in the image of God, and we are also made to wage war and make peace whenever we can. But indeed, reality for us is a World War II movie. Hope enables us to live life to the fullest in the midst of this war. And besides, unlike World War II, the outcome of the war is certain. Life as we know it will have the happy ending preordained by God, through the battles, and though the battles in between depend on us. And as if unbelievers, even unbelievers, have the possibility of being, building a fantastic well-being as being life builders. Of course, as the very children of God, we have the opportunity to multiply that happiness and well-beings many, many, many times over in our own lives. And yes, what I would like to say in conclusion is, as far as the representation of the gospel, yes. And this is critical. Okay, it took a long time, but this ministry has justification figured out. We've got to move on to focusing on sanctification, okay? Because that is our biggest gospel message, okay? The way we'll know if we're doing it adequately enough and endeavor to do it enough is when people start coming to us and asking us, as Peter says, about the hope that they see in us. In my first session of stuff, the stuff I shared coming from mainline leaders about not us being the gospel and all this nonsense about the Christian faith being strictly confessional, that obviously is a lie right from the pit of hell. And the fact of the matter is, Scripture is clear. When we live in effective sanctification, the world looks at that and they see hope. And then they come to us asking about the hope that they see in us. But ultimately, they will see no more hope in us than they have if we are not living an effective sanctification life and a Christian life, okay, as literal children of God. So therefore, go about aggressively learning how to love God and others more effectively and doing it more effectively without any fear of condemnation. Thank you.
There's a children's song that speaks to what you just said there at the end.